So, I mean, we have to take that. I mean, we're gonna take all these other considerations. I know
We're
you're just
not
giving us
expecting a response right now, but when it comes down to the intent or reasons why, we understand that there's limitations and things that sites have, but at the same time, we have got to provide what is a reasonable amount of time for folks. In some school sites, it was down to like 18 minutes or something, and when you drop the kids, pick the kids up, use the restroom, you've got like 7 minutes to go eat lunch. So we're trying to get at least to what would be a fair amount of time.
What about a teacher volunteers for lunch duty because they never, ever want bus duty? We're going to pay lunch duty on bus duty.
Well, but I mean, the duty is the duty. The idea is that this is, you're not necessarily told that you will never have a duty, but you are told that you will have a duty for lunch. So there are two different things. One is you can reasonably expect to have a duty, but when it comes to your lunch, you would reasonably expect that you have lunch.
And just for, I mean, I hear about lots of things. People call me about people who roll their eyes at them, people who walk past them and laugh. You know, like things, I go from like really silly things that I don't think deserve a lot, and I go to really big things where this is one of the areas I don't hear much about teachers' lunchtime being taken. So that's why so it just gives me a frame of reference, because that's one of the things I think I hear consistently from administrators is sometimes planning, blah, 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 but duty-free lunch, they sincerely try to, but this gives me, okay. Making sure, okay. All right.
And in the same way that we will always give careful consideration whether or not we hear that from an administrative standpoint, we just ask the same.
Sure.
Pre-planning preparation period, because many of our pre-K are part of the elementary, we want to make sure we capture them, all pre-K elementary school instructional staff employees, just to clarify, because they are at the school site of the elementary, but by state statute, sometimes they're not considered part of the elementary when it comes to drop or something else that applies to the job. Bonuses, things like that, correct. Every effort will be made to ensure that, and then we are, as we have advocated in the past, at least 4 out of 5 planning periods will be reserved for individual planning time. The issue that we're having is, and this may be, as we've discussed about student contact time in elementary school, we've got a large number of people that every Tuesday is an IEP day, every Thursday is an RET day, RTI day, and then you got another meeting, a team meeting on this day. So by the time we get done with 4 out of 5, and we say every effort, people are getting like 2. So the issue is we understand the importance of the protected planning time is to go ahead and be able to assess what the students have already done, to be able to respond appropriately in a time manner that gives them the feedback so they can maximize their growth, as well as put forth plans that go ahead and meet individual student needs, are not carbon copy cut. It has to be tailored to the independent interests of those students. So that's the intent of why we would like to protect that. Furthermore, in that one, to the extent possible, consistent with program and staff needs, so site administration shall provide employees at the same school with equal planning time. When it comes to the planning time, because we understand the variance and stuff, but we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity for it. When they're elementary school employees, if you're pulled special area, the special areas are one of those areas. Eventually, class size gets so big because it's not part of the state part, but that takes away in planning, and we just want to make sure we have that protected, so we can respond appropriately. And then on the other side is for individual planning. So as it speaks to be carried out during planning time and are not to be considered duty or individual planning. So when we are doing team planning, when we are doing grade level planning, whatever it is, department planning, that's not independent planning time because that's often bigger scope and sequence type things. And when you're individual, you're trying to hone in on the things you know that are day to day with the students that you're working. 2 speaks to elementary teachers again, which are special area. These teachers who are assigned supervision during special areas shall be provided additional proportional pay for their hours if someone is pulled to cover a class, just like at high school when someone's pulled to cover a class. They're losing out on something that they're going to end up having to do for free at a later time. Number 3 of this section talks about receiving compensatory time for covering for classes if someone is pulled. And again, like I said, the proportional additional pay at their hourly rate if someone's pulled to cover a class. We know that there's sub budgets, and for some schools right now, we've been kind of shared with that sub budget is exhausted. And so we're going to split classes, and so when a sub doesn't show up, then teachers cover it, but then the sub money doesn't get used. So there are resources that are available that we can talk about that may be another way to go with it, but right now we're looking for proportional pay. Down to employee B. This shall in no way prohibit assigning employees to non-consecutive work hours compensated at their hourly rate when agreed upon by the employee and the site administrator. So this is talking about the, work week shall not exceed 5 days. We know that there are some individuals that are being asked to do summer school or Saturday school, should I say. And, we're trying to be creative about helping those students. We just want to make sure that if those opportunities are provided to staff, that they're mutually agreed upon and paid at the hourly rate. I know that it came up about one point in time, last time we talked about summer schools talked about, and yes it is. And there is a little bit of part that we're going to need to kind of clarify on that, because your position of hourly is needed is discussed in there, and it talks about, people will get their hourly rate, but then hourly is needed. 18 points or 17.5 hours, over 18.5 hours to get this. That's about summer school, so it's all Article 21 we can talk about. When we get down to employee work week, again.
Can you give me another example of B?
On B.
Where there would be a deal between the administrator and the teacher on hourly rate for what type after hourly rate.
So he said Saturday school.
Yeah, Saturday school is being asked at certain school sites.
Then we know that projecting for the future, that's COVID slide. COVID slide, I'm gonna try to do Saturday school, continue to do it.
So we've got ESSER money or whatever, have that conversation where the federal government anticipated that we would work together and also have the inclusion of parents in that conversation.
How many hours? Explain to me how many hours are on Saturday school put for it.
So I just happen to be chosen at my school to do it. So it's 3.5 hours. Well, 8 to noon, so 4 hours. The kids are there for 3. 3.5. Same until they're all gone. So how many weeks was it?
Your rate?
She is giving me 6.
And then Shane, you give an example of bond.
Like bond, I know bond does Saturday school too also, and they utilize their internal funds.
Or any, the way I read this is they may not be getting anything. It's voluntary. So they're getting.
I don't know if any.
I
I don't know if
we
any
were
teacher
asked
I think they're
for
very
Saturday
sensitive on what
schools
the school has in terms of
for
resources.
disciplinary reasons.
Say it again, dear.
At one point, Saturday schools were offered in our school for disciplinary reasons, like we were making up attendance records and things, and we were offered like comp time or something else. It was,
But there was some form of compensation. It may not have been your hourly rate, but you didn't come and not receive anything.
I didn't,
monetary.
I don't- yeah, I didn't volunteer for it, but I know.
You're only on 200, my dear. Okay.
Yeah,
But it was monetary.
yeah. So there's some sort of,
Or,
at one point it was,
or sometimes it was.
and sometimes it was comp time, but there was multiple emails over the last few years. So.
Yeah, yeah.
It changed, it changed.
For Saturday school, for disciplinary, march
Mhm.
monitor students. Okay.
Yes.
And it was mainly attendance.
Attendance
Yeah,
purposes.
that's just to
It
cover
was-
attendance failures.
Yes.
And they would try to get the academic things to do.
Alright, thank you.
As we go into 7.02, there is a portion that talks about, take a look at B2. Employees shall at all times during the school year have input on developing their teaching schedules. We just kind of felt that whatever the professional duties, that there could be input from the employee to be able to have discussion, because professional duties, I still don't understand necessarily what professional duties are, because they're not necessarily defined. And so it's pretty out there with professional duty, you know, class size, class load, number of students, professional duty, the duty that I serve, professional duty, the plan book that I did, professional duty. We're doing a carnival now. I need you to have this carnival on a Saturday. That's your professional duty. So the idea is, depending upon the situation, to be able to at least have that input on what professional duties are. And if you have a definition for what professional duties are for the district, we're okay. No answer.
No, it's the
I'm just processing.
We don't know what it is.
Which is why, if it's gonna be anything that someone could get signed, then that would be something that people have to input on. So until we get an answer.
How have we existed with this thing? So apparently we have. So apparently everyone understands it, whatever it is. Right?
I think it varies, I mean,
You said, right, I mean, this is like, a week or something, and I just get one period. You know, get prejudice out on the table. Or, you say carnival, I ain't doing the carnival. I can take the carnival.
Just on
Have carnival, some don't, that's also a financial issue. You have a carnival. So it's like, we can too.
But I guess the
put in
idea is,
definition.
yeah, and I've added it to the list of possibly giving a definition for it, because the thing is, professional duties, the idea is to create, you know, fair and equitable manner. Is that fair and equitable manner at a school site, fair and equitable manner from school to school, district-wide? I'm assuming that it's district-wide, because
School site. I mean, all of this is almost. It would be fair and equitable to give carnivals to only elementary, not high school. So it's school.
but elementary,
It's children. I mean, principals aren't their duties and stuff.
That's question.
but if one person is being asked more of than another employee, it's still.
In another building, in a whole other school. You know, this would have to be that school. Just.
Yeah, people do.
No.
That's
It could be in that one school.
So,
Everybody knows
so
which
one
school
will
has
make it
more.
fair and
commitments than
equitable.
the other.
But within that school, that one. Who inside that school?
Well, I think the idea is that there's variance between school to school, we're trying school that you shouldn't be, you know, too far outside the lines of what's happening at a fifth grade teacher at another school. Like, where the professional duties, or they be created at the site level of what professional duties are. That's part of what we'd like a little more clarity on from the district's perspective, but also
The key word here is assigned. This is being assigned to you, not necessarily volunteering. Like, if I'm a fifth grade teacher and I want to volunteer for the carnival and this, that, and the other, that's a different manner than the assigned fair and equitable. If I'm assigning something, that means I'm being told to do it versus volunteering and setting yourself up for doing multiple activities and other things. That's a volunteer assignment.
So on the next page, 702C, it's kind of definition. Special duties may include school, physical assignments such as job related activities, conferences, buildings, supervisory assignments. So we want to expand that.
we want to narrow it down to clarify it, that there are things that should be tied to the school improvement plan and not just arbitrary. Assignment that achieve what we're doing for students and for the school to make it better, not necessarily. Along the way. Okay. We'll get down to that one, but the next one was the 4, which was when assignments are made later than these dates due to unforeseen circumstances, employees will be provided with fair and equitable compensation and planning time for such changes. Meaning that if we take a look, other assignments shall be made in writing 2 weeks in advance of the scheduled duty.
I'm sorry, stop worrying.
We're on page 3, which is work.
Okay, all right, sorry. When you said 4, I went to the next one. Okay.
So the reason why is because if somebody is told that I need you to move from this room to this room, and it's Friday, and the students are showing up on Monday, and the person is then expected to work over the weekend, it's asking for fair and equitable compensation.
You're talking about classroom assignments? Classroom assignments?
Usually that's what this is assigned as. No employee shall be required to stay beyond their scheduled workday or to participate in activities outside the scheduled work week without being assigned a specific professional duty. So this goes back to professional duties and kind of this definition that it seems like you're not required until you are required. And so what defines the professional duty that then becomes not required that now is required?
Next sentence, meetings, committees, conferences.
Well, in supervisory assignments, that means I can assign anyone to supervise, and that's now a duty that we have to be at. And if it takes place after the school hours, then and it's required.
Open house. You're expected to be there.
Right.
And it's always after hours. It's mandated that you be.
So would you want payment for being in open house?
This one's basically asking that as things that are not required then become required. That's what it's called.
So newly required, or like not, like last year we did it this way, but this year we have a new extra in the blank assignment. But not last year was okay. This year we have a new principal. Whatever we want. So we want to but not all, because we didn't exist without
That's it. Right, that's later on.
Because I'm just saying, every time I hear hourly rate,
Right.
this is probably the worst year. Or the year rate. So we'll have to come up with something.
I would like to say to the budget part of it, this is not the year, that we have had other years that we have said that this is not the year, and we've watched our fund balance increase. So when we talk about this is not the year, it's more about will, not necessarily can you or can't you.
This is a loss of FTE year. We've never ever had. It's not, the legislature's cheap this year, like they always are. It's who shows up. And there's, we had a lecture earlier with another group. It's amazing how many are not showing up. We're praying they are going to show up. So I'm just saying, if we agree with all of your language, we'd have to come up with some verbiage. This should be a budget that's just aside, I'm not saying that.
And some of the things that are highlighted was just more to make sure that we have discussion about, just like you guys had last time. Number 2, assignments. These assignments shall not be used to assign employees to professional duties for which compensation is provided by supplements or extra pay for extra duties. The way that this is worded is more of a discussion. I know that the intent is like you get a supplement, you're not going to get paid for something. That's understandable. You're getting paid. So
You would think so. I didn't read on
Yeah.
that. They want comp time on top of it or something. It's right now here, but it's like really. But ask for more supplement rather than comp time. So these assignments should not be used to assign. Once strike that makes sense.
it's just basically saying that if I have an extra duty, like I'm going to have a carnival, that I'm not going to do compensation if it's carnival supplement. Like you wouldn't make an assignment for something that's not a supplement already.
But isn't that the complaint that we are making too many assignments without supplements?
Yes, but the thing is, supplement already pays for it, so it's not actually called a professional duty. You've already got a supplement. About to keep it.
No, I'm just curious as to all college.
Failure to volunteer in extracurricular activities will not impact employee evaluation. The reason why I highlighted it is because we all know domain 4. It's more of a reminder of how we, what the contract says, and what the practice is. And we have your C, which is the language that you guys wanted to kind of take a look at. And this kind of speaks to, the district may require employees to perform additional compensated assignments beyond the work year under the following conditions. The 30 days and the 20 days is part of making sure that there is communication between LCTA and the district as to what the intent is on working conditions before it is then communicated in a timely manner to employees, and to limit it to 5 days that the summer doesn't get co-opted. Because the idea is that's where those teachers, even though they're working a lot of times, it's a choice of theirs to then be told you must go to these things are required, and it will be over 5 days, especially in a summer that's only 6 weeks long. It seems that 5 days would be reasonable, and thoughtful communication planning can also be. For the good of the order on E, I did reach out to virtual school just to let them go ahead and reach out to Gina if there was any issues with the language, because this wasn't MOU that got folded into the contract, and I don't know if it necessarily represents what's happening at virtual.
Jessica reviewed it one time and came back and emailed and said there were no changes.
No change.
Then you sent the email to her
Okay.
and Dina had me respond on her behalf because she asked what does she need to do because she realized there was a change that needed to be made. We told her to put it in writing and send it to us. I think I responded all, I think you should include it. If not, I'll forward it to you, but we've asked her to give us those changes in writing.
This mostly speaks, I think, to not a full-time kind of virtual school teacher. So, just saying that we may not be done on our so. The additional information. Going down to page 5, which is 3.07, in-service activities. I know that there was a discussion of adding language of deliberate practice plan, and so part of what the concern here is required by the site administrator needs of professional growth as documented in the deliberate practice plan. There are so many different deliberate practice plans because everyone's picking different elements. That are we now saying that if there's different elements, the site administrators should be requiring multiple trainings that people have to go to based off of their deliberate practice plan, or are they deliberately practicing that skill? Plus, it could also fold itself into mandated as conditions of employment based off of if something came up in the evaluation that was an area of concern that was like, hey, here's something I would like for you to kind of do. So it already deals with mandated as condition. Maybe there's something that corrective action plan or something was requiring it. But when it comes to deliberate practice plan, didn't seem like it was the required part from the site administrators. Improvements more appropriate. And then it also opens it up to other appropriate documents, which is about as wide Grand Canyon. So could include that part as well. When funding is available through grants and special entitlements for employees training, we have gone with employees shall be paid $30 per hour stipend required in-service training beyond the contractual teaching day. And the reason for this is that if it is something that is required, mandated, thought to be very important, then it should be folded into the standard 7.5 workday. It is not able to be done so, and we're requiring people to be a part of it. And if it's to meet state standards or federal guidelines, that they should be paid the $30 per hour. If you take the 43,304 and back it out to 196 days at the 7.5 hours a day, it's just under shy of about 28 cents from the $30. So it's closer more on to what minimum teacher pay is and what the average rate of pay is per hour. And I did highlighted teaching and education center because I wasn't that sure if that's what it's called still. So just threw it out there. Within 30 days, this is the kind of a modification on this language because this process, as though it was negotiated, and you know, we understand timelines, we're outside our grievance period, but that's okay. What we thought we would do is we fold it into a practice of the district to thoughtfully think about what is the training that we want to start to provide during the summer and through the course of the next school year, but do it in a way that's kind of similar to what we do with Turk. That it would be one of those things where in February, the groups would meet, and then hopefully by April, there would be an understanding of what the offerings would be, and our funding sources would be a little more at least outlined so that we could plan to communicate it to LCTA 30 days prior to the end of the school year and to staff 20 days prior to the end of the school year. So it was just looking for a way to kind of have a little more inclusion and communication.
Sometimes, it's in every year, the legislature changes session. So, like next year, this will be in the middle of a session. So we have to have some flexibility.
And I
There's gonna be
understand
a
that
brand
part.
new program next year called Florida's Best 10 Billion. The new 40-hour requirement.
They're gonna add really.
You're adding for now, Stephanie.
I'm gonna speak to this language on the other, within 30 days, 2007 activity parties will convene. The reason we did that is because we were changing the language for when funding is available. It got added in here because of that, and that was it. To remain. Past that, but
Which one's that again, Shane?
So
it says within 30 days, because we had, we had a
Oh,
decision on the
Yeah,
language.
okay.
And so that was the reason that all of that was being.
Well, and the thought process is if we're gonna be asking people to do the trainings during the summer and they're aligned and everyone kind of same way we do with everything else, for the most part, we gain an internal understanding and then share it out. And so I think, some of, not that it comes from that department or otherwise, but what we're trying to avoid is some of the things that we had to do as a reaction to how this kind of year started and stuff. And sometimes things are done, implemented, and then it's surprise time for some folks, whether they're administrators or teachers. And so if we can collaborate, communicate, have a group that kind of thoughtfully thinks about it, then, we know what's coming down the pipe. If flexibility is what's required or needed, which I understand because of state statute stuff, because I was just thinking, there's times where the budget doesn't get approved until the very last day, and July 1st you find out about stuff. So we're open to counters, but that's the intent. C takes the idea of that previous part and brings it down to the school site level, meaning that each site shall develop an in-service schedule and compensation plan for staff in conjunction with the school advisory council committee or shared decision-making council for participating sites. The approved plan shall be shared 30 working days after the school year begins, the same way that the comp time plan will be. No more than 6 hours of site-based in-service shall be held on designated plan days. And that's where there were 2 half days or something that was in there. But we could take, what's a half day based off 7.5, 8.5, that kind of thing. Again, the intent here is that if there's going to be, for example, Hartsfield, WT Moore going towards this IB, this PYP, that folks would be, this should be inclusive of the school advisory council, that this is what parents, teachers, everybody's looking forward to doing, and how's it going to be implemented? What are we going to be offering to the teachers so that they can set their schedule, training, and it's aligned with the school improvement plan. Not that it's any of the administrators here, but there are some people that wonder about the budgets of their schools. Training opportunities that have been there at one point, but are no longer there, whether it's a funding issue or people used to do more travel and those types of things. I know
They
that
didn't,
folks.
they didn't have the allocation.
Yeah. So, no more than 2 half days of district-wide in-service, as authorized by the superintendent, shall be held on designated planning days. And so again, if the planning day is for planning, and the trainings need to be somehow not limited to the planning can take place. Because if we take planning days and we just put, again, the language is not very clear on any limits the way that it's written or as it was proposed. So that means my whole planning day is at the end of every 9 weeks when I'm trying to close out my grades, finish my report cards, do my comments, get ready to plan for that. And now I'm in a professional we understand the intent of getting ready for the test, but then we also know that there's other logistical things that still need to take place.
What point do we do this?
That's where it's compensated. It's not the regular workday of 30 hours, or it's one of those things where it's through those committees where they plan on where they do. If the committee through, the teachers' inclusion and everyone has this where they're like, you know what, I don't want to give up this Saturday. We'll go ahead and take a plain day. Point is just to make sure that everybody that is going to just actually have buy-in on what's taking place. Because I think that for the most part, everybody understands why we're doing stuff. It's just that sometimes things kind of it's that one more thing mentality. And if we can kind of break that, people can be a part of something.
I'll urge you to check with other districts on how it's compensated. We are another very compensating. That's not a job.
No, that was a feather.
We still
Yeah.
do that.
That's
We
a
still
good
do
thing.
that. It does not happen.
Well, and the thing is, we know not every school district has a shame site. We know that. And so it comes from the top down from that department on how it works. So, we appreciate it.
You don't do lots.
Oh, yeah, fair enough. So, on to 7.04 compensatory time. This is language that's already been approved by the Leon County School Board. So, where monetary payment is not approved for duties that extend beyond the contractual workday, loss of lunch, covering another employee's classes, exceeding student contact time, or mutually agreed upon duties, the employee shall be given compensatory time equal to the amount that is 1 1/2 times the number of hours worked.
So you say previously approved, you mean the first part that's crossed through?
No, the part that's underlined is part of the last book. It's not the contract, it's not this.
Okay.
That's sort of-
I thought you meant, okay.
Number 3, the nature of the employee assignment beyond the scheduled workday for which compensatory time will be granted shall be determined in cooperation with the school advisory council and or shared decision-making council if such exists in the school site. The reason why we switched to site in a lot of places is because sometimes the departments don't know. I will tell you that there are some things that we know in terms of language that we're trying to get you. As you review, you'll
Yeah.
be able to see what is probably possible and not possible based off of what Shane is sharing. The compensatory time shall not be earned for activities for which additional compensation is provided, and that kind of deals with what we've already talked about, assignments, coaching, cheering, or for those that are ordinarily encompassed within employees' responsibilities as salaried professionals, such as council meetings, teacher organization meetings, and guest meetings. Want to make sure for the workload, caseload, when it fits purposes for 7.5-hour day employees, and when it fits purpose or not. So, for use of compensatory time, the employee who has accrued compensatory time and requests use of time may be permitted to use the time off within a reasonable period after making the request. If it does not unduly disrupt operations, that is less of a language as well. Employees approved earned compensatory time shall be carried forward from 1 year to the next and carries to another school with employee transfers. It is recommended that employees use compensatory time privacy for annual leave. Portion of that is less, but portion is
A little bit of difference less because their hours,
Yeah,
we have to pay them. They don't use it.
they're not exempt from fair labor standards, they clock in and clock out.
There's some things as well.
Well, I know that it's kind of, there's been some discrepancy on whether or not, you know, it's allowable to do this, and there's nothing that we can define in law that says that. 3, previously earned compensatory time may only be used to, I guess it should be, not only, is just sick and personal leave within the provisions of the CBA. So the idea is that if it says personal leave, this is how you take it, sick leave, this is how you take it, it would fall within it. So therefore, where everyone's concerned that comp time would be used in, you know, swaths to 30 days at a time, it's not possible. All unused compensatory time will, and then lapse upon the resignation of the employee. That's because, well, in the previous part, it said that it's gonna roll over.
Oh.
So, just because your annual contract. And number 3, no monetary reimbursement shall be awarded for compensatory time. If we are providing compensatory time as sick and personal leave, and there's monetary value to it, there's monetary value. Because you're using it to get it paid. But it doesn't say cash. So no monetary
Reimbursement.
Are you getting so we're not saying that they're getting reimbursed by switching it out for a second person. So I guess it's more of terminology and what the intent is.
It's just making it clear because less we have to pay that cash. Here, this is made a contract. It's not really for example, people. Some people get overtime, some people make up. So it's not. Some people think we can check if it. I think that's what that's saying to me.
I think the word reimbursement is your confusion. I think that word can be, if you're saying cashing out, that's probably not a good term either, but it's clear. You're saying you can't accrue comp time and cash out at the end for monetary value, you know, to switch it out. But that reimbursement, I just think that's the wrong word to use. It needs to be a little more clear.
Is payment a better word? Monetary payment.
But if compensatory time is used as payment of sick and personal, you get paid.
No. Yeah,
You're using comp time in lieu of.
right.
Right, and that comp time now has the monetary value to it because it's what you're getting paid.
And so you want us to treat you guys like hourly employees.
Oh, okay. Saying that when we use it for certain personal, there's compensation that takes place because it converts into money.
It's just a different concept, right? I understand what you're getting. I think the sentence is
Yeah, the word
is to
reimbursement.
tell those who don't know the obvious, this is not cash. But for less of it, it's cash. The intent. Their comp time, should they leave, we owe them time and guess I can write it. My guess is just filling that.
Within 30 days of the employee contract, the district shall provide to employees who decide a copy of the plan for implementing compensatory time. That is consistent with the provisions of this section. What we're basically asking is that if we're going to have one school site accruing comp time in one way, if we need district-wide, this is how we do comp time. That meaning that follows this contract. By doing so, there's no ambiguity of where one school site, prior to our settlement, there was no compensatory time given when people were working out over their contact time, but then other school site was given away like pop rocks. So if we're gonna have people within the employment of Leon County Schools and it's under the contract of LCTA and Leon County School Board, it should be consistent.
Sometimes people like their own deals that they cut for the sake of, they've got different deals cut. So that could, I understand your point, that uniformity is good unless you're getting a better deal at Charles.
Well, then we'll take Child's deal for the district.
But then the deal could change when the site administrator changes, and so then the way of work changes.
Consistency.
That's
And then that's when.
so the district, this is, for lack of a better word, the district is the country, the state's or principles. And the district doesn't have a comp time universal, as I know. And I don't know if any school, everyone has. I mean, it's hard enough to develop a list of what is comp time, but try that. We tried that. It's interesting in every school, and sometimes dentist appointment somewhere is, weeks comp time, some places is 4 hours. Anything goes, it's a handshake. So I don't know that a district, I don't know how the district.
I don't know how you do it for people that are exempt from fair labor standards. I don't know how you do a uniform sheet saying we're legally gonna give you something that the,
But I
that
also
we're
think-
mandated that
I
you
also
shouldn't be getting.
I
If this is,
also think your
Yeah.
members, I think your members are clever. Somehow this works. I think now we discovered during COVID.
Yeah.
Big problems. I know. Question is, prior to COVID, are we shaking this up because COVID messed everybody?
No, what we're shaking up is that most people didn't care about comp time because you couldn't use it and it didn't mean anything and it sat in the contract and it looked like we were doing something for people, but we weren't. I mean, that's.
and I think it looked different though at every school, because there are some principals that do honor.
Well, I'm not saying,
I'm just saying in
but
general.
blanket, most people were like, I don't care.
Right.
I'm gonna use it.
Yeah,
Now
because,
I've
and that's
got-
the issue, you couldn't use it,
Yeah,
you
I'm not gonna use
approved
it,
it,
planning
but
day, I need plan.
you
Well,
couldn't
like
use
that.
it unless it was a planning
But
day.
now there's a
You
required training on it.
couldn't use it. And most people don't.
So the district, I guess if the district would ask each principal to do what they're doing, to put it in writing. And we'll probably have 42 comp time.
They do already.
And if we like the current arrangement that's going on at the school, right, that arrangement works with that site administrator, and then that site administrator leaves, do we get to grandfather in that old rule and regulation? Because that worked and that was, I'm just asking, like, if
Yeah, I
we're gonna
would-
do
I
it
would
by
say-
Saying like,
site
when the
administrator
carpet comes
wise,
out.
it changes.
So it's a good question. So the question is, if you make a deal in May, and we make a change in the first one in June, does the deal hold in July? Or in
Yeah.
August when teachers come back? Okay. Almost, we got a turn.
Hypothetically.
Just put it in front of them.
Every time you have a new manager in place, you have to change, because they're changing. I mean, that is,
That's how it
That's-
works.
I mean, matter of fact, that same thing would go if I was hiring teachers. Alright, I may have had to just deal with it, I've got to rearrange that. So that's just something that just has to happen, I think.
Some administrators leave and everyone says amen, and some administrators leave and people are upset.
Yeah,
because they
yeah.
get promoted or stolen or so they're, it's a tough.
Okay, here's a good example of comp time. Some schools get comp time for if you see additional work that the county expects to do, it's required to do, that's not within the student contact. Some schools do not get any comp time. So something basic like that, where there is an expectation from the county to get done.
And I would like to add, so I absolutely agree with Patty. We ESC teachers, all teachers have more work than we can fit in a day anyways. ESC teachers are burdened with an extra layer of paperwork, administrative tasks that we just do not have time for our regular planning time because we plan for our lessons to serve our students and then we have additional work. So like Patty was saying, some schools have that comp time for doing their ESC paperwork after school hours and other schools don't. And that inconsistency causes a lot of feelings of frustration and anger sometimes because at different school sites, people are getting different services. And I think that's part of the reason we were looking for a district level plan to increase teacher and employee morale across the district because there are such discrepancies between sites and people talk. Everybody knows what's going on and we want to stay at our school because we love our kids, we love the schools, we want to find a way to make it work. Another point I just wanted to add, following what you were saying, I don't remember your name, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Joe Burgess.
Joe Burgess. After what Joe had said, you mentioned something about kind of like making a deal with your management and your administrators. I think that is a difficult point because a deal is sort of under the table in some cases, right? Some people are going to be doing great deals for everybody across the board and it's going to be fair. Some people seem to have favorites, some administrators, and if we're relying on making a deal, potentially people who our favorites might get a better deal than other people. So I think having something more concrete and consistent would be beneficial for all teachers.
Just for the sake of time. Go, because we have.
Because I feel like you made the point of why the state says you're not supposed to get it. Because it is so complicated for teachers, because teachers work all the time. As a teacher, we always do. If we paid everybody for the number of hours that they do,
Yeah.
jobs are already in. You know what I'm saying? But that's more the state's.
Well, we again, these are.
We do understand the frustration. I think everybody.
Yeah.
At least at me, that's not. I teach for 2 hours at a seminar. I don't think that whole day. The whole day. I said, how do you do 7 hours? 850. That's right.
That's a strange.
There's beverages for that. All right, well, let's move on.
We'll move on. I do want to say the last thing though, we do have consistency when it comes to pay of individuals because there's reasons we want to be consistent. So when we say we don't want to be consistent with a way of doing compensatory time, I think that's just more function of past practice than anything else. So on to the next part, which is meetings. The reason why critical needs is highlighted is because it's not defined anywhere, and so that means what is critical need could be changing from whenever someone wants to be a critical need. Like that. I mean, we do understand there are certain things that are critical,
Right.
but what's the threshold? That's part of what we'd like to understand, whether or not that's defined, or at least given some explanation on intent.
Right here, okay.
That's on 7.05. 2 talks about 72-hour notice shall be provided and required back to meetings which extend beyond the standard or extended workday by more than half an hour. Some people who see 1.5 hour think it's 1.5 hours. Just to be very straightforward, it's a half an hour.
We probably could agree.
Yeah, you probably did, you probably did. And
Just for the heck of
5 hours, yeah. A site administrator may require attendance at such meetings, and this is part of the up to these limits. I think the limits were the ones that were listed in 1 and 2.
Okay.
And then that's what they were referring to, up to these limits. You know, so we just said up to the limits listed in 7.05.
Because it was a blank and there.
Yeah, and we were wondering what that.
It wasn't a blank.
Okay.
And then when it comes down to district meetings, you know, beyond the student day, and I think we do have to have a conversation about district meetings at some point in time, because like, this is a district meeting, right? And it's gonna end at 7. So,
That, no pun intended.
yeah. So.
Okay.
7.06 rules and policies. This also, the darker highlight says professional duties, because again, that was one of those things that came up. Employees shall comply with rules and policies adopted by the school board and superintendent. The issue of and perform all professional duties assigned by their immediate supervisor subject to the provisions of section 7.08D. 7.08D is just health and safety stuff. So like, you could be assigned anything. How to follow professional duty. I think the idea is the board has policies and superintendent leads, and so yeah. So what are the limitations, I guess, if you look at it? It's everything that just seemed pretty.
The way I've seen this written before is you follow all your administrators' directives unless it interferes with health and safety. You're not just going to administrate or outside of something that could interfere with health and safety.
For me, which is employees shall be notified by the site administrator or immediate supervisor of district policies yearly within 5 working days of adoption and or within 5 working days of adoption. And access to such policies shall be made available to employees on site. So it's not a central location somewhere. There's a physical piece takes care of the centralized, but the idea that policies, like where they are, how to find them, we're gonna redirect it, and that's what's governing what everyone does. Because there's no policy to read. For that.
So you're saying there's little work to be done on that?
Well, maybe a little knowledge, information.
Let's call it up.
They are. There you go. Usually when the administrator comes with, I have an opportunity for you. So, and then handbooks. There's a lot of handbooks that are out there. And
No.
oh yeah. So no site shall implement a handbook or site policy that infringes on the rights of employees outlined in statute, policy, or this contract. No handbook shall negatively impact wages, hours, terms, and conditions of employment. And any changes in working conditions must be negotiated and agreed upon by LCTA and the district prior to implementation. So, want to make sure everybody's wearing a certain type of outfit or something.
You don't go like that.
Yeah, we'll just grab. Telephone. Yeah.
For the minute.
Everything comes with a So the telephone facilities and stuff, we kind of understand, but we weren't quite sure what school policy people have about phones. Like there should probably be a district policy about phones, but I don't know how each school would have a different school policy about phones that are available. But our main issue is we want to make sure that there's communication and ability to get a hold of someone in case of emergency. Like you don't have a phone in your room, an active shooter. School policy is the intent, but ours is more about making sure we get a hold of people or some of those information, or get a hold of the office. So, and then the site administrator, instead of make efforts to ensure privacy. If it's confidential student information, I think we should be making sure it's, yeah. I mean, I don't want to, I tried my best. This one's confidential information. D, the school board agrees to make private restrooms facilities available to the use of faculty and staff where possible. So if that's 3 miles away, that's where possible. So I don't understand what where possible means, and what the intent is in terms of.
I just think some schools are newer, some are older, some have specific faculty bathrooms. I know I went to a school and was working with the principal. Usually principals will sometimes have bathrooms right connected to their office. Others don't. I was sent down the hall, so I think it just depends on the age of the school,
You blame Scott Hanson.
Well, we need to run.
But ultimately, we know that, like Leon High has the Louis bathroom. And so,
that's not fair.
I'm just saying, there's places where people can't get to a facility in the time frame of planning.
You want them
And
back?
you need to
Is that
put
what you're
something
saying?
somewhere else.
No, I just.
So my point is, what is where possible? So if a pipe is coming through and it's got water, that's where it's possible. I guess we just need to clarify that. District
I
shall.
can see the grievance, there is no restroom.
I'm gonna need your mom time to get to the
Well,
At my hourly rate, I'm reimbursed.
Because I'm so old, I'm gonna need accommodation. Because I go more often.
So we're moving.
I need a golf cart.
District shall provide monthly maintenance, inspection of classrooms and other learning areas. The regularly kind of come to agree that it's monthly, so just to put it in writing. The results of such inspection shall be shared with employees in LCTA electronically via email. The idea that there are concerns, especially with what has happened in COVID and everything, about air filtration systems, when things get clean. And to be quite honest, the facilities are being cleaned by the instruction staff a lot of times. Like there's things that are being wiped down on a regular basis, cleaning toilets, things like that, especially if they're part of the class. And the idea that I have to, just want to make sure we're being very transparent about some of the needs of the schools. Not as a, I got you, but if there are issues that need to be addressed, we just want to be aware of. When making an assignment for vacant, we understand the concern about teachers being able to select their classrooms, but this one seems to be written more for a vacant room, there's a person that doesn't have a classroom. And in terms of not having the classroom, I now would like a space. This space is open or available. I'd like to give my input. And so based on the needs of students is what needs to go first. We're not selecting needs because I would like to have a sink or whatnot, but some needs the students. So certain group needs being there because of the content they're teaching. And then preference shall be given to teacher requests. Put in a request, depending upon want to put maintenance there, that's your choice. But in terms of the language, it's just making sure that people that don't have a space can eventually pass. We'll go down to J real quick. All facilities shall maintain adequate charging stations, accessories at sites in addition to the charging provided to students and secure storage for student issued devices. We've got a lot of Chromebooks that are out there, and we got kids that can show up without a charged item. We've got classrooms with only like 1 or 2 plugs in them, which means that they can't facilitate these types of things. And whether it's headphones or otherwise, I mean, there's just things that if we're going to adopt this one-to-one thing, we have to be able to actually put the resources available to them.
When we switch back to having everybody back, I think the needs that are coming up now are only going to, they're only getting bigger. So to assess the issues and the problems now before we come back to school is going to be vital.
K, LCS shall determine and maintain the bandwidth needed to meet maximum simultaneous peak demand on a per user basis at each site and classroom. This is some ESSER money right here for you. LCS shall regularly monitor the bandwidth Wi-Fi so that to adjustments can be made in a timely manner. The bandwidth for any instructional setting shall be half of the district students accessing video at a certain time on a certain day multiplied by the minimum bandwidth needed to stream the video. What we've had is we've got a number of people doing videos that are independent of the student. It's not the teacher just showing it. So we have to be able to accommodate how many kids would be on these devices at any one particular time to be able to go ahead and sustain and not drop folks. Because every time it happens, it interrupts instructional continuity and turns the teacher into IT.
Both of these issues are really a facilities, an IT, and a management issue that Marvin, you expect, just like you expect the AC to be on, we're not to say we will put the AC on when you're in your classroom. It's 78 degrees. So we understand. And we,
Yeah, we definitely do.
language-wise,
Well, it's a working condition when it comes to one-on-one, being a one-on-one district now. Because we can't do our job.
yeah, obviously the district would want Wi-Fi to work. It's not working. It's not because the district desires it not to work. There's no language. Something's wrong. We have to fix it. So
Yes, but there are some schools that don't have enough.
I think this year has taught us a lot of where our technology needs are met. And there is going to be, I only say unfortunately because it's not the first minute, there's going to be money directed towards this issue from these federal programs.
And the idea is we're just ensuring to make sure that
But that's
they have the ability, because if we're going to put people in those positions and it's just expected that the district will do it, or if there's a want to do it, wants and needs are completely different. Like it is a need of a 1-to-1 ratio of district to have the ability to be able to use that Wi-Fi in a way that you know that your instruction that you plan can be implemented. So L, all facilities shall have adequate cell service to ensure communication during emergencies. We can't get any service to anything in certain places with these center blocks, and provided that something goes down, and this is how we're supposed to in a case of emergency. Plus, we've got teachers using their cell phones as hotspots and stuff for students because of the bandwidth modification. All facilities shall have an adequate cell service. Employees shall not be required to use their cell phones for school-related activities. And then M, nursing mothers protections. It's pretty standard language in other contracts about what the federal guidelines are, making sure there's been a couple of conversations that refers it back to human resources if there's an issue. Health and safety. District agrees to maintain classrooms, other learning areas, school and district facilities in a clean and working condition for use of effective teaching and learning. We have seen that this kind of the site administrator or supervisor shall take appropriate actions with 10 working days the date he or she is made aware of said problem. He or she shall notify the district of the purpose of taking appropriate action to investigate and resolve the matter. The deadline may be extended by mutual agreement between the affected principal and LCTA representative. This is in regards to safety issues on the ground.
Companies, but one, there's a safety issue, and one, there's a threat. It's a threat. Condition. The appropriate action may be called facilities, and they order something 2 months later.
I'm gonna tell you right now, we were dealing with an interactive board that hasn't been in the classroom since January. We're at the end of the school year with 15 days left. These are some of the most vulnerable students that have don't have the resources that they need in order to be able to get instruction. And what has happened, facilities or technology is being told about it, we've ordered it. We started the school year off with issues that dealt with a school where there weren't keys for the staff. And there were calls that went out, like in the area where there was lockdown. And they can't lock the doors because they were accidentally discarded during the summer. So
Teacher.
And that took months.
Teacher.
That's, I mean,
Okay.
I know.
not for sure, but I know that they were collected.
We've had widespread technology shortages. We saw how long it took to get the.
Yeah.
Well, that's a Chromebook pandemic. So, I mean, but the thing is, when things go through a process, if you don't put a time certain on something.
There's certain
a time
things
where
that
it shouldn't
need to
take
be
shape.
addressed that we know that our facilities are lacking. I mean, our schools are older, and some of the things that need that have been addressed and pushed off.
feel like culinary departments in the kitchens, sinks, and all of that stuff. The plumbing is just old, and there are things that happen in the culinary classroom frequently that the maintenance department has to come out frequently, or it takes 4 or 5 emails and messages to a maintenance department to get them to come out, and the kitchens are shut down for X number of days until we can figure out who stuck the knife down the disposal and now it's in there. You know, those kinds of things, like, things, the schools are older, the equipment's older. Yeah.
This is why it's
Why I don't have garbage.
garbage disposal.
Yeah.
Fingerprint.
Whose fingerprint, yeah, take some time. It's done.
He tries to
Get it out.
Get it out.
And then the hand's gone, and now we got the hands out there again.
Remember workers' comp, raising your hand?
Right, yeah, I don't usually rush us along, but this conversation makes me nauseous.
Yeah.
But the idea is, yes, there are imminent threats, and then there
They
is,
just be put there.
In short, we feel that.
moving to kind of deal with it.
Some of this is just.
And also out of our control.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you gave Joe everything he wished to happen in the building, or everything, we all have. We understand.
I just think.
But the thing is.
But at least
there's a-
acknowledge that you got the information in the first place.
Yeah,
You
this
don't
is
have to
the thing.
fix it in 10 days, but you need to acknowledge that you received the email or you received the complaint.
You're in the queue.
You know, that should not take 10 days, that's just the
If
courtesy,
you don't want to use
professional
language, I'll
courtesy
just
to let you know.
It's okay. On to the next part, and this goes back to the boarding notice, that other part, LCTA shall be granted immediate upon request for the site and district representatives under the provisions of section 2.02 if significant safety and health issues at the site above have not been met or addressed to the satisfaction of employees within a reasonable time. So talking about health and safety, are big ones, doesn't seem unreasonable. If it's what we already do, then let's ensure that other people are sitting in the seats that we are. The district shall establish a centralized process to investigate complaints, correct any findings, take measures to reasonably accommodate employees, and report on the status of submissions on a regular basis. So if people are submitting things and people are asking for things to be dealt with that are safety, having 14 different ways, if it all goes through a maintenance department, should the maintenance department have a way to manage all the things that come to them that is centralized?
Right, so we're saying safety. I know it's in this department.
It's in health and
I
safety.
know it's in health and safety.
Yeah.
I went off on this.
Yeah, I did too.
So, bomb threats, in the event of bomb threats, at the work site, G. Employees shall not search students, but shall promptly report suspicious circumstances to site administrators or prompt investigation and appropriate response. I don't think teachers are supposed to be searching, so when you say employees shall not be required to, then that means that they can if they want to.
Or could be told.
6 or a half dozen being that.
Yeah. Just to make it clear that you should choose.
That's true.
Don't choose it. You won't be required, but if I want to.
Yeah.
We got some people that
No, exactly. Bomb threats, in the event of bomb threat, the work site shall be evacuated until persons with appropriate expertise deemed to be safe. Employees shall not return to school or other employment centers which have been evacuated due to bomb threats until the parents for such return is given proper food. Employees shall not search for bombs.
That's all that.
Maybe not.
Those sticks in there.
Leonard's not
Right.
Safety equipment, district shall provide safety equipment, safety glasses, lab coats, and/or shop aprons for all employees assigned to subject areas where the employee is subjected to more than to be expected grease, dirt, chemicals, art materials, and similar agents. And it goes to the affected employee may, through their department or team, make input to their principal on the type of quality clothing mentioned above. The principal shall take the final decision. Health and safety component, each school advisory council shall develop a health and safety component to be included in the school improvement plan. And then K, air quality and health and safety, LCTA shall appoint 2 people to serve on the, this is a committee for district air quality and health safety committee. You can name it whatever you want. These representatives may bring recommendations or issues involving indoor air quality to the attention of the district appropriate for public address. The site shall review health and safety air quality issues and make recommendations addressing such issues to the site principal / administrator. So, we know that some of our, like Godby has like an HVAC that was like, 1960, I think. So we're a little outdated. Given some of the things that are
Just so you know, there's a 5-year facilities plan in every district. All priorities on each year. And then it has to be funded. So everyone has the wish list of a new AC, and a new this and a new that. But then it comes down to how much capital outlay and funding comes to each project. So everyone can have money and need, so really bringing everything won't happen unless it's on that 5-year facility plan and funded by some source, usually the legislature.
So, and I don't know, principals can speak to this part about the capital outlay committee or whatever. That kind of stuff. I didn't get to touch that
No, and no one really, they can't address it at all. That's the district.
So hypothetically, no, but the thing is, sometimes the things that are mentioned on those are the things that look nice, when parents show up, but they're not the things that the school needs in order to actually push air through the building or create the Wi-Fi. So, I mean, so ultimately, the issue is prioritizing in a way to actually allow the learning to take place.
Which is the board's responsibility to provide the environment for learning.
So what I hear you say is you tentatively agree to that, so Chris Porter.
I think you may have. Some of this is really,
Yeah.
it's all true, and that the needs are there,
Right.
and then it all comes down to money. This is a different pot of money. So there's not a doubt there's air needs, there's not a doubt there's computer needs, there's not a doubt there's plumbing needs, there's not a doubt there's windows and lights need replaced. I mean, it's not a doubt. Hopefully, some of the American Rescue Plan will be rescued with some of these funds, and there is some of these funds, but this type of stuff. So,
And part of the reason why it's here is because none of those monies are coming, we want to make it a priority.
it's usually not. I did those spend most of the bargaining filters or something. But it's usually not. If we say no, it's not a priority. It's the absolute priority. Happier teachers, happier students, better grades, board looks good, everyone gets reelected, everyone's happy. That's kind of the formula. We want all teachers happy, all parents happy, all students happy. And it's a function that then comes back to functional money. We will let you, we don't know yet where the money or how it's really given, how it can be spent is a mystery to the district so far. But we know these are important issues. I don't know if we can sign off on it. But they're important issues in there.
Except the district part, the personnel. Good job. We understand that the intent of this language was always to be able to have school and district personnel come in. The intent of this language, as it was written in bargaining for, was when parents want to come in 15 minutes before class starts, we haven't been able to go ahead and notify the teacher. It was about having that notification of people that are outside the district. So therefore, in principle, we accept the district. ESE, so 13. What we did was we took what was there for ESE and we just kind of called it ESE, like some of the other sections. We gave the AP, broke it up a little bit below it. So the formatting is different. So A and B are exactly as they are in the contract. It's just kind of separating them out of that subject area. And then C, whenever possible, individual education plan meetings should not be scheduled during the student contact times. Compensation shall be provided for meetings that extend beyond the standard workday. So the understanding is we don't want to interrupt instructional continuity of the students that are there. But if you're going to have 3 meetings for the next 3 weeks, all after school, you're now, those ESE teachers are putting in extra time. That's not that bad. Service providers include but not limited to occupational therapists, physical therapists, school psychologists, speech and language pathologists, etc. Shall not be required to complete any extra teacher duties, including but not limited to morning duty, bus duty, lunch duty, recess duty, or dismissal duties to ensure protected planning time. The issue that we have is we've got some folks that have caseloads you could speak to of upwards of over 100 right now. And for that person that's trying to get to that many different students to then be pulled for different things, it makes it very difficult for them to do their planning days. In addition to the scheduled planning period outlined in 7.01, exceptional student education employees and service providers shall be granted one additional planning day each quarter at the discretion of the employee for the purpose of completing ESC-related paperwork and tasks, IEPs, progress notes, scheduled meetings, etc. We know that the demands are very high, and what they're ending up doing is taking a lot of the stuff home and work late. So we just want to make sure to look out for them and give them the time and space to be able to do that. And then IEP meetings, if an IEP or MTSS PST meeting extends beyond the employee's contracted hours, the employee shall be paid their hourly rate for the entire duration of the time outside of the 90 days specified in the contract. If meetings are scheduled before or after the teacher workday, any teacher required to attend will be given notice at least 5 working days in advance to every extent possible. Now, there's emergency IEP meetings, so that's where your wiggle language is there for you. That makes tracking thoughtful about notification. What's in the red was just what was already before the format and all that. You want to speak to those?
Just to, thank you for clarifying that D, that service providers also include speech language pathologists, because we are in that cohort. But specifically for item F there, I just wanted to clarify that even though we're in the ESC section, for item F, that referring to the teachers, it really is any teacher, general education or ESC teacher or service provider that is required to attend meetings outside of that contract time. That they are given notice, and that if any of that, the meeting time extends beyond the employee's contract hours, the employee shall be paid at their hourly rate for the entire duration of time outside the length they specified of their contract. And all the other references to any teacher in there is referring to any teacher, not just an ESC teacher or a service provider. I just wanted to clarify.
So land planning on 714, pre-planning and post-planning. In principle, we can accept the 7 days working when funding is available. There's no additional funding for that 7th day, those 2 days. They're already part of the contract, the 196. So it's no additional funding. And one of the things that was talked about was we put the and professional development, because with 2 extra days, that would be where professional development could take place. Okay. And then B and C was where we just broke up the pre and post just to make sure it's easier to read. And then where it says shall not exceed 12 hours for the pre-planning period week. This is what I'll say. We left it as is. The reason why it's highlighted is for you to give some careful consideration on how much out of 7 days would be needed to kind of carve out, like, what is the schedule, so that we don't go over and beyond, and it's a little bit more coordinated between district level, site level trainings that need to take place. And so just wanted to let you know that we know what the intent of the other language is, but if we could just give it a more specific number. And then 715 job descriptions. There are individuals that do not have any job descriptions, and it's everything under the sun. So if it moves, we do it. And so what we're looking for is job descriptions and positions. All employees will be given a job description, which would help with the assigned duties. Job descriptions will be reviewed from time to time from input from the Small Improvement Central Council, and then be brought to LCTA and LCS for consideration, since the description of the jobs and the work that people do are to improve the school's ability to meet the needs of students. Whenever the district determines that new positions are necessary, the job description for that position will be shared with LCTA, and get rid of the A, negotiate. So if there's a new position that needs to be placed in there, what is that position? If you look at some of the descriptors that are in the end of the contract, of what this contract covers. There are positions that are instructional staff that are not necessarily mentioned, but are considered. They're given creative names in Skyward. Teacher hyphen, and then something else, or like, I don't even think deans are even mentioned in here, but yet deans are a part of instructional bargaining. And so you've got things that are and aren't, and perk certification is wide and deep and all over the place. So past practice has created these things. And if there's an intent to clarify and clean them up, I know it's a want of yours.
If I could add to that, I recently had a member who had to fill out paperwork for a tournament, and tournament asked for job description, but she couldn't find it. It was all over the place, but we could go to other districts and it was laid out.
I will say we are aware of this issue. It is on the front burner. It recently came to my attention. Within 24 hours. It will be done very soon. Advertised in a couple of years. That's all I can say.
Okay.
We understand, we agree, we probably will not agree to negotiate this stage, right? What we will negotiate is that all teachers have to have a master's degree. So, master's degree. Not the details, like, didn't have to say teacher degree. Whatever, I think it's right, but it's non-negotiable that a cop has to pull 100 pounds coming out of the car for the students. So I don't know how you bargain job descriptions. We will share them. Well, they're going to be advertised. Copy of them, say, we don't do A or B or C, like it's in there. But it probably would be haggled in this setting. But you will definitely, I know you have your input. If it's not been done,
Oh, Martina, you're on my side. What's going on here?
yeah, I need this is a sensitive subject. It's not partner. We've got it.
So what? And to that extent, I think I hear you. Appreciate, because I think it creates a lot of clarity for folks. And if negotiated is a concern, as long as they're reviewed from time to time and kind of like more of a discussion, you can feel free to count that way. It's your choice.
Oh, we will.
Just so you know, it's
We've got lots of notes. Lots.
I'm sure
Do you have any
do.
from 2014?
We won't find them.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that.
No, you haven't found 2014?
Somebody hasn't responded to last week's.
retention period.
Oh, yeah. And the retention period is? Well, then we'll have this discussion. Last but not least on this one, the especially, I think the issue is that there are times where things, yes, we added the especially not too long ago because there were some issues that were taking place. Specific ones. And so, but the intent is not to make the comments there, and in a private setting. So. For the purposes of moving things along evaluation wise. You accept? Fine. I'll offer.
We accept the paper.
Good. We're starting to put the process down.
Mm-hmm. So in this particular part, we're just gonna move real quick because time wise, but yes, let's spell things correctly. When it comes to instructional practice for professional responsibility for student performance measures, that is in principle, yes, that's why it has been changed. To create a summative score, student performance measures may not be tied to high stakes testing testing at the employee's discretion. That's where it has removed. And And then for purposes that they're not all teachers, they're instructional staff, and everything's going into leads, we took the word teacher and changed it to employee to show that they were covered by the contract. So you're gonna see where teacher is
Replaced with
replaced
employee.
with employee throughout it. And then when it comes to D1, outside of the other, an explanation, discussion, and review of the evaluation process shall accompany this distribution. So at the beginning of the year, when we share it out, we don't want to just go, here you go, that's yours. This is our evaluation. What we're asking for is a review of the process.
Which where are you, Scott, I'm sorry.
We're on page 2.
Yeah, I'm at 1. Oh, okay, I want to make sure I was, okay, and review, okay.
And then we would like to keep as part of the district employee orientation. And part of the issue is this, that when someone does the new employee orientation, we realize there's a mixture that the district is currently using right now.
Yeah.
But it needs to be isolated to the skills of what that person's going to be doing, so that we know that in the new employee orientation that takes place, they will be given the information that they're going to be held accountable for throughout the year. If we just say that it's going to be covered in some way, it's not uniform because we don't know who's implementing it. We want to make sure that process is kind of right.
Okay.
Number 3, failure for the district to follow the leads process with failure shall result in an instructional staff member being rated highly effective. We know that you've seen this before, but here's the issue that we're having. Just in the same way comp time is differently everywhere, this is a very subjective process. And if you're going to have a reduction force tied to a subjective process where people are going to be called back based off of their evaluation rating, and the evaluation rating is not being followed with fidelity, you could have someone that is negatively impacted by not going through the evaluation process properly and then not asked back through a RIF. So
The problem is everyone affected or below is not a good fidelity. Everyone's highly affected by the same administrator will be with it. See, these words, we could never define this in a grievance of what is with them. So we have a subjective instrument and then we have another subjective word.
So it's a subjective issue.
I would think every principle is slightly different.
Just like every teacher grades students
But
based
that
on.
evaluation, what used to be, what was part of the RIF, that was in the whole entire process was your years of service. That's a concrete number that goes along with it.
It was easier for us.
Right. So now that we have this evaluation rating, and it's part of all of this, and you can't say that even school A is evaluated the same as school B is, but yet, because you have an administrator over here that's a little more stricter in how they interpret, that now these people would be the ones that are not asked back, even though you're comparing apples and oranges.
Program needs and evaluation, so I bet language or something, it's not. We cannot use words like fidelity. Because the person who doesn't get good evaluation is going to say it was not good. See how predictable?
So here's the thing, it's not so much about not a good valuation or not.
Would be one.
So here's the thing, therein lies no pre-conference, no post-conference, missing dates when evaluations are supposed to be taking place, being evaluated 1 month prior to reappointment and getting your first eval things, and then that being used to not reappoint somebody. These are the things, fidelity is not, do you like it's, did you follow the guidelines of what the leads document said, of what the time requirements were and how to implement it?
Now I get it.
So you
I
be
understand what
using,
you're getting.
So following the process.
using these.
So, yeah, that's what,
Counter,
that's what he's trying
The
to say,
wording.
is that the word fidelity is follow the process.
So using the
I
established.
think that, yeah, I get it now.
processes or
After the-
guidelines
use lots of them.
that are-
The number of links is formal walkthrough. The only reason why I highlighted this is if we have lengths that are being discussed. So we just not put the lengths and the number here so that people don't have to put on it up. So that was why it's highlighted for that idea. That's put it in. Number 5, the feedback is provided that may result in an employee not being appointed instructional coach and modeling shall be for the purpose of improving instructional practices. The intent of this is that if somebody is not doing what they're supposed to do, that, and it's a developmental process, what happens a lot of times is there's a comment that's in there like, do this one, do that, but it's not necessarily, I need you to go look at this classroom, this is how it needs to be done, or here's some professional development to work on to make yourself better. Not saying that all, but there are sites and cases where it's not done as much of a coaching piece. And we're dealing with, well, for whatever reason, the perception of this is a shop. And so we're trying to avoid that by saying, let's support, if we're really looking for best teaching and the students aren't receiving it, and there should be something to facilitate. After the formal observation, we just have the administrator and the employee shall schedule a post-conference observation conference to discuss the administrator's observations as soon as practicable after the observation and within 10 days if problems or difficulties. So, you know, if there's problems or difficulties and it's a walkthrough and it's an observation, you shouldn't be only doing it on the phone. You should be doing it every time it's something. Pursuant to the requirements detailed needs, just employee instead of teachers, it's the same. And what was done in terms of the underlying, the employee's electronic knowledge shall indicate only that the employee read the evaluation. That's the same language in 8. So we just copy and paste it up just to be consistent. Number 9, they were highlighted or they were capitalized before they weren't capitalized here. So this consistency purpose. Pursuant to needs, the rating and feedback provided through observations may be used to select individual professional development and determine a deliberate practice plan. Should is not one of the words that it should, but we're basically saying there's an allowance, not a choice. 13, employees shall provide input on domain 4 professional responsibilities by means of a turf-approved survey no later than 15 working days prior to reappointment. That, you know, if we're gonna, I know the principals see a lot of stuff, but not everything. We just want to make sure that people have an opportunity to provide some feedback. Participate.
6, you said within 10 days, should we specify that?
Where am I here?
Number 6,
Page 2 at the bottom.
Page 2 at the bottom. So 10, and then if you want to put working on that. Yeah, we want to clear that up throughout it. Like wherever it says days, just to specify, are we talking calendar days or working days? What we're on, whatever.
You need to clear that up.
Like,
It goes back and forth with things. And you and I.
Some, you need a definition in front. Day means calendar, it's otherwise specified. For calendar.
Any event that an employee is concerned that their evaluation rating is inaccurate, the employee will present their concerns to the site administrator. Everything else is the same. It's just that there's concern with rating. No one has used it, but there's a day that I'm looking for. There's actually a Turk that gets the head review.
Quick question.
Yes.
So I heard 2 different things about what days mean. I heard one person say days equals calendar days. And the
No, he
other
said we
person
need to
said
define
days
it.
equals work. Okay.
We need to define it.
In the definitions in the front part of it too.
So we will, we're not agreeing.
Correct.
G, annual contract renewal decision shall be made no later than 4 weeks prior to the end of the school year and after all required evaluations have been completed. That's from 1302, it's the only part that should survive. When it comes to administering tests, your agreement that probably could go to Article 7. We did not move it this time, but in terms of discussion, that's why it's highlighted in yellow. And Young County School to work to collaborate with LCTA to review how teachers are assigned. The issue that this was brought into is because there was an issue. We negotiated this in the last 5 years because there were a number of teachers being pulled for their courses were being assessed. So it impacted. Yeah. And student contact time plan and lunch shall be adhered to during testing days as outlined in the contract. Just to make sure that just because it's testing day, people still provide it. Those are at this time. Yeah.
Just real quick, on
Yeah.
number
We are
10,
getting
number 10,
better.
should, to
We are moving.
2 minutes to go.
Leonard's very happy. I was not.
The reason I'm should,
Leonard.
that's a teacher point.
Right.
Okay,
Well, the may allows for various, you may use it, you may not use it. So in terms of shall, will, may is the most flexible. And so,
Where are you, Shane?
from number 10, I'm a good with I just want to make sure.
well, I mean, always add it to employee's discretion. if you want it. It's very minor,
It is.
but I just feel like if it should, then someone's gonna go see you. That would be.
Like every other day.
Oh, every reasonable.
When available, we like arbitrary.
Like at hourly rates, I think it should.
So next
Summarize
summarize
that,
that.
Robert. Accepted.
Yeah.
Physically, just take the room.
For June 2nd, we
Yeah.
will have Article 3 recommendations
Okay,
for you. And then, like, we can at least present those, and if you want to put Articles 13 and 7 up on the board and try and hash it out to find common ground in real time like we've done in the past, since we've all seen each other's proposals, that's an option.
okay.
That will require the help.
I mean, in terms of, we'd have to turn around, we'd have to do, I mean, but if we are collaborating, we could just,
Share
everybody, could pay,
sideways.
we had it up here, but we took it down because Scott had provided paper with everybody, so we could just be reviewing what you all offered. But either way, we can do it out of place. If we were going for consistency, because if you start changing, we're here, there, and then people go, where are we supposed to be?
Well, and the only issue is that if there's an audience, there's not much space, and depending upon what you want space to line. That was just a concern.
Yeah. I think you did really well, accepting all of the paper. Lots of paper and glue.
Such thoughtful consideration.
Yes. Careful.
Careful.
I like that.
It was the best.
When you read it, we're
It's the
just
best,
asking
it's
you
the best.
for flashing flexibility in response.